talking about that one. So first up, we have Michele Shapiro. So welcome.
Thank you, Amanda, and good morning, everyone. I'm Michele Shapiro, Director of Human Resources for the Department of Transportation, and as Mike mentioned, soon to be retired Director of Human Resources. Kelly Hutchinson will succeed me as Director of HR. Unfortunately, she couldn't be here today, but she will serve as an excellent resource moving forward. In addition, I would be remiss if I didn't mention also in the meeting, Andrew Tenard. What I'm going to speak about today was really his brainchild and his vision that we just kind of helped push forward. So he's here as my backup as well. So I was asked to provide a short presentation on DOT's Highway Operations Apprenticeship Program in an effort to show you a recent workforce development strategy at work. In doing so, it would really be easiest if I talked a little bit about why we engaged in this apprenticeship program and also what we learned from it. So why did we undertake developing an apprenticeship program in highway operations? There were actually several reasons that we engaged. The first was our inability to identify a good pool of candidates who had the experience that we were looking for. Secondly, we realized that there were inconsistent job skills throughout our crews. Supervisors approached on-the-job training differently, and not all had learned best practices themselves, so they were passing on less than desirable practices to their crew members. And finally, we realized that our resources were insufficient as structured to perform meaningful specialized work. So what did we do about that? Next slide, please. So the first thing we did was to consolidate by eliminating specialty crews. Our crews were broken down into 4 different types previously. We had landscape crews who handled vegetation control, bridge deck work, tree trimming, tree removal. We had construction crews. They did basin repair, bridge deck work. We had sign crews. They handled all types of signs from, the signs on the side of the road in addition to those overhead. And then we had our maintenance crews who handled all other non-specialized roadway work. So broken down in this fashion, for example, if you had a tree that needed to be removed, the crew had to put an order into the specialty landscape crew, and they would get to it when they could. That might take a week, it might take 2 weeks, it might take a month. So it really was not an efficient way of doing our work. In addition, the different crews held very unique titles and had specialized skills. So we weren't able to share the resources among the crews. So we did the only thing we could, and that was to consolidate the work and the titles to create a new crew structure, one that could get all the work done. So how did we do that? Next slide, please. So we started by developing a new title structure. Where we once had 15 independent specialty titles, we now today have 6. Each crew has a supervisor, an assistant supervisor, and a complement of highway operation technicians at various levels. With the titles, we also established a staffing profile for each crew. The staffing profile in this slide is an example of what the average crew looks like in DOT. Since each level of the title represents a different level of job knowledge, skill, and responsibility, it was important to establish how many of each title would be needed to perform the work within the crew area. For example, you will see on the slide that the profile calls for 2 highway operation technician 3s. And an employee at that level is expected to take lead over crew members. Since we don't want every employee to take lead, we limit that level to 2 positions. And then we gave the same consideration to all levels of the title. Once we had that staffing profile set, we transitioned each crew member into the appropriate level of the new title series based on the title they were coming from. And from there, we were easily able to identify the gaps and then start to focus on filling those gaps. Next slide. So what was next? The next and probably most important step was training. We understood that we had to develop a strong training program in order to make this new title structure work. We also recognized that nobody knows the work as well as we do. So we developed a training team of our own subject matter experts from within the ranks of our crew supervisors, and we made them trainers. This group of SMEs, along with training experts from HR and Civil Service Commission, developed the training program, including the curriculum. But then we had to identify where to start our training. So we knew in order to succeed, the training had to begin with the employees in the hybrid crews so that they could learn how to perform unfamiliar work that was now expected of them. We had to first ensure that all highway operations employees could confidently perform the work that would now be expected of them. It would also ensure that the work was being approached consistently throughout the state. We called it level set training, and that consisted of both in-classroom training and practical hands-on training of all types of highway maintenance work. Once we had that accomplished, the training team initiated what we call advancement training. And let's look at that a little bit more closely. You will see on this slide that we developed training with the idea of supporting an employee through all levels of advancement in both skill and title, all the way up to supervisor. It's important to note that the training starts from the ground level. The entry level title, the trainee, doesn't require the candidate to bring any education or experience to the position. So training for this position has to start very basically, CDL, basic safety, basic winter operations. We want them to master the basics before tackling more. Then with each level, the skill sets advance right along with the title. As with the level set training, each level of advancement training includes both traditional in-classroom and hands-on practical training. However, the advancement training also includes an added element, on-the-job training. It's referred to as OJT here on the slide. Our supervisors first receive training on what would be expected of them when they are now responsible for providing meaningful, fair, and consistent on-the-job training. We also develop training journals, which are issued to the employees at the conclusion of the classroom training. The journals include a listing of competencies the employees must demonstrate to their supervisors before they qualify for advancement. Through on-the-job training and an opportunity to demonstrate performance of various tasks, the employee receives a notation from their supervisor in their journal under each task for which they have successfully demonstrated their competency. Once they have received a certain percentage of journal notations, they're then eligible to apply for advancement to the next level. In all of this, there was just one obstacle that we had to overcome, and that was the civil service system in which we work. So if we could go to the next slide. As many of you may be aware, DOT has to work within a civil service system where advancement through title levels requires civil service testing. So developing an apprentice structure required a bit of finesse. Instead of developing a traditional apprenticeship program, we went with a more notional one. Notional because an employee can choose to stop their advancement progression at any point beyond the journeyman level, and because the civil service testing had to be incorporated into the higher levels. At the entry point, The Highway Operations Technician Trainee is a non-competitive title. That means there is no civil service testing. After 1 year of successful performance on the job, including any training and the completion of their training journal, the employee advances to the journeyman level of Highway Operation Technician 1. Again, there is no examination associated with that position. An employee may remain at this level, the Highway Operation Tech 1, as long as they wish. They can stay until retirement, or they may work toward advancement to the Highway Operation Technician 2. How do they do that? To achieve advancement to the Highway Operation Technician 2 and subsequently to the Highway Operation Technician 3, the employee must first complete in-classroom and practical training, as well as the corresponding training journal, as I mentioned earlier. However, these higher levels of this title series additionally require civil service testing. Also, keep in mind that advancement may only occur if a vacancy exists at that level based on the staffing profile that I talked about a little bit earlier. We realized early on that the traditional civil service test was not really a good measure of employee skill sets for this title group. So again, we had to think outside the box. Next slide, thanks. In partnership with CSC, we designed a unique practical examination process, which is administered by DOT's training team and human resources through a formal delegation from CSC. In the process, our training team developed a collection of sample work tasks associated with the level of the title being tested. Through a random selection, 3 tasks are identified for the candidate to demonstrate in their practical exam. Select training staff serve as examiners who score the employees on their practical competency. Exercises cover safety practices, equipment setup and use, and execution of a particular task. Successful, the task also has to be completed within a designated time period. All of this is official, scoring is official, and we have to submit our final score standings to the Civil Service Commission so that they can compile the resulting list from which individuals will eventually be appointed for advancement. We have been successfully testing for about 3 years now. Our pass rate is very impressive, and we believe that's due to the comfortable test environment and the familiar test content. In fact, the testing process has been so successful that CSC has just recently agreed to renew our delegation, which is a definite win for us. The next slide, please. So that is our apprenticeship program in a nutshell. Just wanted to go over some of the valuable takeaways that DOT learned and that we are applying to future projects. So the first would be, if the candidate population does not exist, then you have to develop a grow your own strategy. You have to be able to think outside the box and use your human resources more strategically. In this example, we consolidated, we went with did away with the outdated specialty crews and consolidated our crews. And it's really amazing to see how much you can accomplish with what you already have. Remember that change takes time. Now, I say this was a recent endeavor. We started it in 2014, we implemented it in 15, and we are still working toward filling our staffing profiles. So it does take time, just need the patience. Listen to the employees. We found that they had some really great suggestions, but also don't be discouraged or sidetracked by their opposition, because change is scary for people. Communicate. In order to achieve agreement and buy-in, it's important that employees have the information and feel part of the change. So in this case, Andrew and I went out and we met with every crew and we talked about what we were doing. Went out multiple times in the event there were any changes to our plan. And then finally, don't stop. Don't rest on your laurels. As much as we might like to, we know that there are other strategies to explore. So a DOT, as Zenobia had mentioned, we are just starting. We've got approval for our construction inspectors to develop an apprentice title for that. We're now developing the training for that. In addition, our engineering technician, we did the same thing there. And now we're just working on the training so that we can ensure continual growth through their careers. And that's it.
Thank you very much, Michele.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michele.